It's just after midnight, September 13th, 1997, downtown Los Angeles. Inside the most secure cash-handling depot on the West Coast, 6 men are calmly loading money into the back of a rented U-Haul. They didn't break in, no alarm is ringing, no shot has been fired, and in about 30 minutes, they'll drive away with $18.9 million in cash. The largest cash robbery in American history. There were dozens of cameras in that building. Not one of them caught the plan, because the man who built this robbery had spent months being paid to know exactly where those cameras couldn't see. This is how he did it. His name was Alan Pace III, 20-something, sharp, and crucially, an insider. Pace worked for Dunbar Armored as a regional safety inspector. Think about what that job actually means. His entire role was to walk through Dunbar's facilities and study their security. Where the cameras were, where the blind spots were, when the guards took their breaks. When the vault was open and when it wasn't. Every other criminal who has ever wanted to rob a vault has to guess at these things from the outside. Pace was handed the answers. During what looked like routine inspections, he mapped the depot's camera coverage down to the exact angles. And he found what he was looking for. A path, a route through the building where if you moved at the right moment, the cameras simply never saw you. To everyone else, it was a wall of surveillance. To Alan Pace, it was a door left open. On September 12th, Dunbar fired Alan Pace. The official reason, tampering with company vehicles. Whatever they suspected, they clearly didn't grasp the full picture, because they let him walk out the door. And they didn't change the locks. Pace still had his keys. Now put yourself in his position. You've just been fired. You are now the single most obvious suspect for anything that happens at this facility. The smart move, the safe move, is to walk away and never look back. Pace did the opposite. He moved the robbery up. To that very night, here's the building he was about to hit. The Dunbar Depot on Mateo Street wasn't a bank branch. It was a fortress for cash, the place where money is sorted, counted, and staged before it's driven out to banks and ATMs across the city. Reinforced, monitored, and staffed around the clock. And this was Pace's route. Not the shortest way to the vault. The invisible way. Every turn timed to the gap between camera sweeps. Every pause placed exactly where the lenses couldn't reach. Timing was everything, and Pace had picked the one night that mattered. Friday. Because Pace knew from the inside that on Friday nights the vault at Dunbar was left standing open. There was simply too much money moving through it, being counted, bundled, and staged for the week, to keep sealing and unsealing the door. The single hardest obstacle in the entire building, a vault door built to stop people exactly like him, would already be open when he arrived. He just had to reach it without being seen. But first, the alibi. Before the robbery, the 6 men made sure to be seen, together, at a house party. Witnesses, a timeline. People who could later swear they were somewhere else. Then, quietly, they left the party and drove to Mateo Street. And parked outside, an ordinary rented U-Haul. Remember it. Just after midnight, Pace unlocked the door with his own keys and led 5 men inside, straight into the blind path he'd spent months mapping. No forced entry, no smashed glass. As far as the building was concerned, an employee had simply come to work. They didn't storm the vault. That's the amateur's move, and it triggers every alarm in the building. Instead, they went to the one place they knew the guards would come to them, the staff cafeteria. Around midnight, Dunbar's employees came off the floor for their breaks, 1 and 2 at a time. And 1 and 2 at a time, they were ambushed and subdued. Bound with duct tape before a single one of them could reach an alarm or a radio. No gunshots, no siren, just a building going quiet, room by room, while everyone who could have stopped it was taped and still on the cafeteria floor. And then, the vault. Exactly as Pace had promised them. Open, inside, pallets and shelves of banded cash staged for the weekend. The men formed a chain and moved fast, hauling load after load out along the same invisible route, out to the waiting truck. 30 minutes. That's how long it took to carry $18.9 million out of the most secure cash depot on the West Coast and stack it into the back of a U-Haul. Then they closed it up, pulled out onto Mateo Street, and disappeared into Los Angeles. Behind them, the depot sat silent. It would be hours before anyone even knew what had happened. By every measure that mattered that night, it was perfect. No witnesses who could identify them, no forced entry, no shots, no trail. The FBI would arrive to a crime scene that somehow contained almost nothing to follow. The robbery made national news, $18.9 million gone in half an hour from a building designed to make that impossible. Investigators knew almost immediately that this had to be an inside job. The intruders had moved through the depot like they'd built it. And there was an obvious name on that list, a safety inspector who'd been fired the day before. Alan Pace, but knowing something and proving it are two very different things. Suspicion isn't evidence. Pace hadn't left fingerprints where they mattered. There were no eyewitnesses who could put a name to a masked figure in the dark, and his 5 partners weren't strangers who might flip on each other for a deal. They were his childhood friends. The wall of silence Pace had built by keeping it in the family held. So the money went quiet, split, hidden, slowly laundered through people the crew trusted. Months passed, then a year. The largest cash robbery in American history began to look like it might also become one of the great unsolved ones. To get away with it, the 6 men had to do exactly one thing: keep the money invisible for just a little longer. And for 2 years, they did. The mistake, when it finally came, wasn't a wiretap or a confession or a brilliant piece of detective work. It was a rubber band. A paper band, actually, a currency strap. Around 2 years after the robbery, Eugene Hill, one of the 6, went to pay a friend who happened to be a real estate broker. And he paid him in cash. But the stack he handed over was still bound in its original wrapper, a branded Dunbar currency strap, the exact banding used to bundle the money that had vanished from Mateo Street. The broker recognized what he was looking at, and he went to the police. That single strap was the loose thread the FBI had been waiting 2 years for. Pull it, and the whole thing came apart. Hill confessed, and once he did, he named the others. The childhood loyalty Pace had bet everything on finally broke. And now the small things mattered, because investigators had, in fact, recovered one physical clue from the scene all along: a broken plastic taillight lens. On its own, meaningless, but it matched the type of U-Haul truck used to haul the money out. A detail that meant nothing for 2 years suddenly slotted into place alongside the confession, the straps, and the money trail. One by one, the arrests came. Alan Pace, the inside man, the architect, was taken in. He maintained his innocence. It didn't hold. In April of 2001, nearly 4 years after that night on Mateo Street, Alan Pace III was sentenced to 24 years in federal prison. Eric Boyd, whose role involved a gun and who had a prior record, got 17. The other 4, Hill, McCrary, Brown, and Johnson, received sentences between 8 and 10 years. 2 more men who'd helped launder the money were sentenced as well. But here's the part that still stops people. Of the $18.9 million that left that depot, investigators recovered less than 5. To this day, somewhere around $13.9 million from the Dunbar robbery has never been found. Pace served his time and walked out of prison in 2020. The money he built his whole plan around is still, for the most part, out there. Alan Pace didn't beat that vault by being stronger than it, or by outgunning the men who guarded it. He beat it because he was trusted to understand it, and he turned that understanding into a map. The vault was never the weak point. The weak point was a company that paid a man to learn exactly how strong it was, and then handed him the keys on his way out the door. Next week, a crew that didn't have an inside man, so they spent months tunneling toward a vault from beneath the street and nearly pulled off a robbery even bigger than this one. Subscribe, and I'll see you then.